The wide receiver market at this point is running absolutely wild, and you have to look at it and think, at what point does it crash?
Audio Jungle.
All right, welcome in. I wanted to touch on the wide receiver market right now. Obviously, Justin Jefferson signed a massive contract, making him the highest non-paid quarterback in the entire NFL this morning. 4 years, 140 million, 110 million guaranteed. He's paid. Real quick, I'll just go over the rest of the wide receiver extensions this offseason. Justin Jefferson, 4 years, 140. AJ Brown, 3 years, 96. Amon-Ra St. Brown, 4 years, 120. Jalen Waddle, 3 years, 84 million. Nico Collins, 3 years, 72. Devonta Smith, 3 years, 75 million. Michael Pittman, 3 years, 70 million. And the oddball out of the entire group, Jerry Jeudy, 3 years, $52 million. Still don't understand why they paid him, but we'll get to that at another time. So the reason why I'm making this video is it just feels like right now that the wide receiver market is at a spot where we're looking at it and all these great wide receivers and great players are getting paid. And the only thing that's running through my head is, are they worth it? Is the amount that is getting paid for them, is the value getting returned on the field? Because I would argue, as of right now, I think that having that true number one star-studded wide receiver who's taking up that much money on the cap is like, I don't know, like, I just don't think it's worth it. We sit here and look, like, Justin Jefferson's taking up like 12 to 13% of the cap. It's just a lot. And now, obviously, we're going to have the CD Lamb contract come in as well. I'm going to guess that he's going to be right underneath Justin Jefferson, like really close. But I don't understand how the Cowboys are going to pay that. But then you have to sit here and think, are these contracts sustainable long term? Because I honestly just like don't think so. So like I'm sitting here right now and it's like, okay, like, do I want to pay Justin Jefferson 12 to 13% of the cap, or get Nico Collins for 4 years, $74 million? And can he give me 80% of what Justin Jefferson can give me? I'd argue that he can. He doesn't have the name, he doesn't have the flash, but I mean, he's a valuable player. So let's get into the reasons why I think this. We can just use this example of team building over the last 3 seasons. The Chiefs made Tyreek Hill a bona fide superstar. When he was with Patrick Mahomes, he was doing his thing. He was not the highest paid wide receiver. And then when it got to a point where he came up for a contract and he was going to get that big deal, the Chiefs sat around and looked and was like, all right, if we pay Tyreek Hill all of this money, the rest of our team is going to plummet. And is he that valuable? They all agreed that he wasn't. They signed and traded him to the Miami Dolphins, and they got an abundance of assets. They then used those assets to build a real team around Patrick Mahomes, and they've won 2 Super Bowls since the departure of Tyreek Hill. So that is what leads me into this thought that's coming up this next offseason, where we look at Tua and the Dolphins, and if they are a first round exit again, or let's just say a super wild card team or a first round exit, you have to sit here and say, all right, is it really worth having Tyreek Hill on this team right now? Because we have a ton of holes on this squad on defense and offense, and we don't have the luxury to just sit here and be like, let's give Tyreek Hill 13% of the cap at 31 years old. And Drew Rosenhaus came out this morning on an interview and said, yeah, like, we already talked to the Miami GM and he knows how Tyreek Hill feels about it. It's like, Tyreek Hill's still under contract. Why is it such an urgency to go and get this deal done when it just feels like you have time to play out this contract? They have all the leverage. I don't foresee him sitting out. I mean, he's older. He's only got a few seasons left. I don't see why he would do that. So I just think it's interesting that these wide receivers are starting to kind of like really throw their weight around and try to put teams in an uncomfortable situation. So you look at like the top wide receivers last year. I'm going to go through the top 6, and I think this is a solid 6 list. I think when you get to 10, it's subjective. And let's just see where they were when the playoffs were last year. Justin Jefferson, at home, missed the playoffs. Jamar Chase, at home, missed the playoffs. Tyreek Hill, first round exit, 5 yards, 64 yards, and a touchdown in that game against the Chiefs. They lost 26-7. He had one long play right before half for 53 yards, and that was pretty much it. 4, CeeDee Lamb, first round exit. The final score of this game didn't really tell the full story, but the 48-32, it was a blowout. The Packers blew them out right away. CeeDee Lamb finished with 17 targets, 9 catches on 110 yards, played a good game, but at that point they were just slinging it around the yard and there was really no big impact. 5, AJ Brown, first round exit. He was hurt first round of playoffs. And then Tay Adams, he was just flat at home. So you look at the top wide receivers and it's like, okay, like these are the guys who Jamar Chase isn't, but these are the guys who he's going to get paid, who are taking up a lot of money on this team. And when the game matters most, like, is it that big of an impact to have them on your team? So I then made a list of what is the most important positions on an NFL football team that you would rank from most important to least. And I didn't do all of them, but this is what I have right now until I found wide receivers. Most important, the quarterback. Big shock. Next, the guys who protect the quarterback, the left tackle. They're always going to be the second most important. Next, the guys who rush the quarterback, edges. All of this ties in together. The quarterback, the guy who protects the quarterback, and the guy who gets to the quarterback on a consistent basis are the top most important players when you're starting to build a team, and you need those cornerstone guys to be successful. Next, I'd say pass rushing D-line. I think that they're going to have a renaissance here in the next few years. You see guys like Dexter Lawrence, Aaron Donald retires. You see guys that like Byron Murphy Jr., who got selected in this year's draft in the top 20, within the top 20. He fits that mold. And I think that we see those guys have a renaissance. Next, secondary. Then I have wideouts. So I'm trying to sit here and think, if wideouts are that important for a team to be successful, and by success, I mean ultimately win the Super Bowl. And I just don't really foresee that being the case. You look at the last few teams that have won the Super Bowl, there's names on those squads. You go back to like Cooper Kupp when he won, but he was not the highest paid wide receiver in the NFL at the time. Then you go like when Brady won with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. Neither of those guys were the highest paid wide receivers at the time. Like the Chiefs the past two seasons, I mean, people were crying when they were rolling out the wide receiving core that they were rolling out this past season, how bad it was. So I just think that we're at a point in time where it is nice to have that luxury of a wide receiver, but ultimately you need that quarterback that raises the floor of all of the players around him who are the playmakers. And I think that's what is going to be most important moving forward when you start to have to pay the quarterback a ton of money and the line a ton of money and keep the defense intact. You're going to be like, hey man, we need a good defense. We need a good line to protect you. You need to raise the floor of these pieces on offense around you. In the scheme, there'll be a good scheme fit for us, but you need to raise them and make them make plays. So I guess I'm sitting here thinking and be like, they're getting paid like they're the most important player, but why make Justin Jefferson, for example, the highest paid non-QB who, when you look at the team, they're a fringe wild card team at best. They might miss the playoffs completely. I just think teams need to be a little bit more realistic with their team building, and wide receivers are obviously having their moment right now. When the cap's going up $25 million every single year, they're the position right now that are cashing in and getting paid. But I think we're going to look back in the next 2 to 3 years and really be like, wow, those wide receiver contracts were absolutely ridiculous. And did they really pay dividends for the teams who paid them? Because as of right now, like I think of right away is like Tay Adams. Tay is kind of got that big deal. He's the highest paid wide receiver. He was the highest paid until today. And his career is just kind of sitting there, but he wanted that money. But when he was in Green Bay, he was an impactful player. He was making around the mid-level and doing his thing. So I just think, like I said, teams need to be more realistic with their team building. Like when you look at what you have, at a point you're going to be like, okay, is it really worth it? Probably not. Like I like what the Bengals are doing right now. I know that not a lot of people do, but it's like, okay, like we paid Burrow, we're gonna have to pay Chase, but we can't pay T Higgins. And it's like, okay, you pick and choose who you want at that point. Me personally, I know it sounds crazy, but I think that I would probably just be like, okay, I would rather take T Higgins at the discounted rate and trade away a Jamar Chase, for example, and let another team pay him all that money and then have that flexibility from like a cap perspective and an assets perspective, because you're going to get a lot in return when you trade away Jamar Chase, and it makes you a more complete team, and it also gives Joe Burrow the best opportunity to go and win a Super Bowl, where he has not been healthy over the past, for his honestly his entire career. There's always been something that comes up. So something to think about, and tell me if I'm wrong or if I'm tripping, but I just feel like the wide receiver market, we're gonna look back on it like I said in 2 to 5 years and be like, they're where the running backs were. Like we overvalued that position incredibly too much, and now we're gonna have to kind of bring it back down. And some guys are gonna get really pissed off about that because they're gonna want their paydays too. But shout out to all the wide receivers this past offseason who got those deals done, who got their bag, because that's amazing to see. But I'm definitely interested to see from a long-term perspective, are these contracts for wide receivers sustainable? Let me know.
Audio Jungle.